Welcome to Make the Grade with the Success Doctor, Stephen Green, where you'll discover actionable strategies to help your student to reach their academic goals, to excel at standardized testing, and to plan for the college admissions process painlessly. And now, here's your host, Dr. Stephen Green.
Hey everybody, Steve Green here, Make the Grade podcast. Today, you know what we usually do here? We talk about actions, we talk about operations, we talk about strategies. Today we're going to talk about creativity. I might have the world's most creative person in the history of the world on this podcast. His name is Patrick Willams. You hear him laughing because it's just true. He is too modest to say it himself. This guy, when I read his bio, you're going to be like, whoa. You better pull over. If you're in your car, you might want to pull over before you listen to this bio. But this is going to be all about creativity in education, in learning, in life, and in work. And frankly, I think we all need to be able to bring that in. Sometimes you get so stuck in your rut, in your lane, as they say. Patrick, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks, Steve.
I appreciate you so much taking a little time to be with us today. Let me tell the world about Patrick Willams. He is a passionate and inspiring artist. He's also a writer, public speaker, consultant, independent scholar, and visionary educator. Over 4 decades of experience teaching and facilitating deep learning to a wide range of audiences. He is an award-winning artist and TEDx speaker. He's exhibited art throughout the US, Japan, and China. His art is in both public and private collection. Has been represented in galleries in Chicago, Seattle, Omaha, and Albuquerque. Was it Bugs Bunny, which is Lloyd Albuquerque?
Right.
Patrick holds black belts in Karate Do, Aikido, and has decades of experience training and teaching Budo. So you have to tell us about those. His comprehension, experience, expertise, and synthesis of creativity and innovation is unparalleled. I told you, this guy's the best. El Jefe to creativity. He is the founder of Saturi Innovation, a consulting and ideation accelerator. Patrick, welcome. You got quite a resume. You don't look like you're 40 or 60 or whatever. Patrick looks like a young guy because he's happy. See, happiness keeps you young.
It does keep you young.
How'd you get into creativity? I don't know that creativity necessarily is like a job description, but it doesn't matter because that's what you do. How did this come about? Is this an evolution? One day you just wake up and say, I want to be a creative guy, or was this something that was always in your life?
It was always part of my life. From I credit my mom being, very encouraging whatever I was doing when I was very small, and she saved, little drawings, little watercolors that I did when I was probably three years old, and it was always something.
Just by the way, are they in Seattle or Albuquerque?
Who?
Your 3-year-old watercolors.
Oh, they're here. They're with me.
They're in your private collection.
Yeah. They're in private.
Right. Sorry about that.
For sure, no problem.
Okay.
So I was always curious and drawing in school, which was both a plus and a minus. It would get me in trouble, but
why aren't you doing your math?
Yeah, exactly. But then a powerful experience happened to me when I was about 10. And it was only about maybe 6 or 7 years ago that I actually put these two awarenesses together. But when I was about 10, a construction project went through the neighborhood that I lived in. It wasn't really a neighborhood. I lived way out in the country and north of Omaha, Nebraska. And in the late 60s, a interstate was built through this area. And literally it was a quarter of a mile from my house. It was, 100 acres, borrowing from A.A. Milne. Literally, it was 100 acres of trees that I played in that was wiped out. And in my TEDx talk, I start the talk this way. So, and at that same time, and I believe that they're very linked, is when my creativity increased rapidly. it was like a catalytic experience for me.
Mm.
And I've never really, tried to figure out exactly why, but it is from that point on, it's when I really started to teach myself how to draw, just a piece of paper and a number 2 pencil, and figured out how to make, a box look like a box, or a sphere look like a sphere, a hand look like a hand. I taught myself shading, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And that just kept growing and growing and growing. And it's, essentially never stopped since then. And I taught myself how to paint when I was 14, 15 years old. And, I just dove into that. My mom bought me some acrylic paints, and I learned how to stretch a canvas. And I was making canvases that were, 3 feet by 4 feet all the time when I was in high school. So, I probably did 30.
So this is why, just to put this in perspective, your classmates are playing baseball and football, and I don't know, whatever the average quote unquote teenager would be doing at that point, driving down Main Street on Saturday night, whatever. How did this play? I mean, were you like an outcast? Were you like the MOC guy? Were you
not really, definitely not an outcast. I was kind of, how, cliques start in school. Sometimes they're around classes, sometimes they're around interests. Mm-hmm. And I just happened to be in a group that was in the physics world. We were in AP physics. So, I was basically the only artist in our group. There were some of the kids that were into photography, and we had a really great physics teacher. And we had a dark room in the physics room, and he was super encouraging. He was a photographer himself. So there was a lot of encouragement on that end. So I didn't really have a art clique. There really wasn't anybody that I knew.
Well, you need more than one person to be a clique.
Yeah, definitely. I was my own clique.
You were the clique.
I was the clique. Yeah.
Okay.
So,
well, it's okay.
So it was. It seemed natural to me to be painting in the bedroom that I eventually got.
So let me flash forward a little bit, because the people who listen to this podcast know my thing is education. I came through traditional structured education. I was a teacher in high school and middle school and university level. And one of the whole cornerstones of education is structure, consistency. Everybody gets the same lesson. You can track people, but why do you think, and I'm going to make a big assumption here, but why do you think there's a separation and creativity? I don't want to say it's discouraged in school. It's not discouraged, but I don't think it's really front and center. And you know what I'm going to base this on is, you know what the first things get cut when a school has a budget issue? They don't cut math. And that's a good thing, because I was a math teacher. They don't cut English. They don't cut reading. The core curriculum. They cut band, and they cut art, and they cut the play. Right. And they because they're not considered essential in the educational process, at least the way our educational system has been defined.
Sure.
That doesn't mean you can't be creative in a math class or a science class, but they're not typically thought of that way. But why do you think it's evolved this way? Do you have an opinion?
That's a.
I mean, we got a half hour.
Right.
So I'm going to limit you to.
Yeah. Let's see if I could. Well, I think it's complex, obviously, but I believe that I mentioned this in our preliminary chat that the manuscript that I'm working on deals with this idea of that there is a split, and I think that the split is not healthy, because I believe that what children and adults, but what children are able to do inside of their art classes, and I mean all the arts, so every genre,
music, painting,
like music, painting,
writing,
dancing, those special skills and attributes of the arts are foundational to learning all the other subjects. And I say this because, and it's not, this is a lot of research over a lot of years, and especially in the early childhood development world, is that it's fundamentally accepted that children learn through play. So from 0 to 7, their whole world is completely focused on, almost completely focused on
And then
play.
it flips the completely opposite.
And
Now
then
you
it
gotta
flips
sit in the
completely
school
opposite.
for 7
Right.
hours a day. And
Exactly. And so in the manuscript, I talk about how I believe that creativity is somewhat of our first language. All right, follow me with this. But then, as you said, when we're about 7 or 8, it's flipped. And suddenly all of us have to learn another language of learning. So our first language of learning is creativity and play and imagination. And then suddenly, nobody consults us. We have to be doing all these other kind of mind problems and situations, and using a whole different
because
approach.
it gives way to academics.
Yeah.
And you can't teach academics while you're on the playground.
Right. So I believe that there's a way in which our learning can be more enhanced with the arts than separated from the arts. And it's I'm not saying that in math class we need to be using crayons to make our numerals, right? I'm saying that when we're in a visual arts class, there are things that we have to figure out that are obviously connected to geometry, but there's problem solving issues, there's conceptions that we have to deal with, critical thinking, we have to there's how we communicate is directly involved in, and all of these things are attributes of all parts of learning, but there's some specific qualities to what happens when we are being creative, when we're making a drawing, or we're learning to play the guitar and playing the guitar. So those I want to assist people in reevaluating them, right? So people are then able to say, oh, you know what? Spending some time during the day writing poetry, like 15 minutes, 10 minutes, is going to assist me in how I'm attempting to approach this law brief or this structural engineering project that I'm doing. It may not make sense, but in all of my studies and all of my experience and watching children and adults be creative, there is some kind of relationship to different domains. So there's one domain that may be structural engineering, and then another domain that's poetry. It doesn't seem like they could have anything to do with each other. But put your mind into the poetry realm for a little bit, and then suddenly you might be like, oh, I know what I need to do with this section of the schematic drawing that you're having a problem with, or whatever it might be. We can come up with thousands of different examples. But I believe that because creativity and play and imagination are so foundational to us learning how to learn, and then using all of that, because we all know how much we learn between the age, when we're born and till we're 5 or 6 or 7. I mean, we learn to crawl and walk and run. We learn to speak and understand language. That in and of itself is mind-blowing, that children are able to become fairly fluent by the time they're 6 or 7 years old. So this is children's learning is so dynamic and so inner structured around their imagination and their playfulness. They're literally discovering the world around them and starting in a way to make sense of it. And so I think that from 7 all the way up to PhDs and then beyond, we need to incorporate these foundational aspects of creativity, of playfulness, and of imagination. There are plenty of examples through, there's a famous French mathematician named Poincaré that was struggling with a solution to a giant mathematical issue. And he just was like, whatever, forget about it. And he was going to go on holiday, and he was on the way getting on it. In the story, it says a bus, and this was in the 1880s. So it was, a description of like a carriage bus, right? And he has, it all comes
So
to him.
the light bulb comes
Just
on.
boom, right? So
Mm-hmm.
these are the kind of situations that I think are so important, that people get too focused on trying to solve the problem, and the problem becomes like too much of a focal point.
Mm.
So it's so important to get out of the problem, but still keep a quality of what you're working on in your
I'll give you my
consciousness.
take here.
Yeah.
Give you my take here. By the way, Steve Green, my guest, Patrick Williams. This is the Make the Grade podcast. We're talking creativity and its role in, I guess, life, right?
Yeah.
I think one of the ways you can look at this, Patrick, is I'm as a psychologist, that's what my doctorate's in. I'm looking at sort of the neurology, right? And I'm thinking you got the subconscious and you got the conscious. And I'm this is overgeneralizing. This is not supposed to be a class on neurophysics or neurophysiology.
Right.
But I think typically creativity, arts are rooted more in the sort of subconscious, unthinking part of your brain a little bit. It's inspirational, right? Whereas conscious problem solving, like what's 4 + 6, is more of a conscious effort. And I think a lot of times the subconscious gets buried or sort of dominated in a sense by your conscious, because you're always thinking, what am I going to have for lunch? How do I make a right turn or left turn?
Right.
What was Patrick's name again? So I think just all these things, whether it's playing music, listening to music, meditating, I don't know, cooking even for some people. I had somebody who was a food therapist, if you can believe that.
Oh yeah.
I think what it does is it lowers your barrier in a sense to opening up the ability for your subconscious or your creative mind to surface. So I think here's the question I'm going to pose to you, without getting into the neurology, although you're more than welcome to. How do we take advantage of this? And when I say we, I mean on a societal level. And you can get into what your Saturi innovation does in the academic world, in the workplace, in just life. How do we tap this in a positive way?
Right. That's the good news.
And this may
is,
be
right.
where you've come in your life's work.
Sure.
Right?
Sure. So, right. Exactly. And so
tell us. Patrick.
Yeah. Here it goes. Well, the good news is that all of us, to the best of my understanding, were children, right?
Once, at some point.
Right. At some point, we were all children. And when we were kids, we played. So we all have that inside of us, right? It's part of our nature as individuals, but as a species. And there's some great, there's a psychologist named Peter Gray, who has written about schools that don't have curriculums. And then he's also compared those to cultures that are fully unengaged in modern society. So hunter-gatherer cultures. And a lot of those studies are from the early 20th century and the late 19th century, because there aren't many left, right? So they have similarities, that their children do nothing but play, and that's how they learn how to be in their world. Okay, so the question is, how do we in this modern world engage in this? And it takes effort. If you're going to learn how to play tennis, you're going to have to get out on the tennis court. You're going to have to buy a tennis racket, some tennis balls, and get out there. So to get back into your creativity, to kind of rejuvenate it or restore it, because it's already there. It's in every single one of us. You have to choose some things to practice, and it doesn't have to be, I talk to people about keeping everything in scale. So lots of people, if they're going to start painting, then like after a couple months, they're like, I'm going to call it the Pope and see if he has a ceiling that I could work on. It's like, that's not the scale that you should be envisioning.
Maybe not yet.
Yeah, not yet. So
well, go ahead. Sorry.
Choose some small steps to, if you're interested in drawing, get a drawing pad, get some pencils, and just start playing with it. But don't
see where it takes you.
See where it takes you.
And what do you say to the people? Look, we live in a very practical, capitalistic world, right? What do you say to the kids who are now adults, who at some point say, I like to draw. I wanted to play the piano. And somebody said to them, how are you going to make money? How are you going to put food on the table? How are you going to, you're going to be a starving artist living as a waiter or waitress someplace, trying to make ends meet, waiting for your big break. I mean, I'm being super stereotypical here.
Oh, sure.
And unfortunately, in some cases, is not entirely factually incorrect, because historically, artists are not. I mean, some make lots of money, but for the most part, it doesn't pay as well as a professional or somebody who's on an hourly wage. So there's a practicality to this a little bit.
Sure.
A little bit. I'm not discounting any of the neural benefits, but how do you, I mean, look, you got so many cool things going on. I want to hear about the art you've got in galleries and your martial arts experience, but just for the people listening, saying, how do I strike a balance between my creative side, my kind of day job side, my maybe athletic side, my whatever side? And is it just a matter of kind of finding what works naturally for you?
Totally. That's absolutely it. Yeah. And this is in some ways, the part of the conversation that some people get tripped up on, is that when you start talking about doing creativity, working on some drawing, then part of it is just the culture that we're in. It's like, they want to go like all in. It's like, I'm going to give up my job and I'm going to give up, everything and just do that. And that's absolutely not what I'm saying. I'm saying that a little bit of it is going to nurture all parts of your life. Yeah. Yeah. So it's like, as an easy example, and because it's super popular, is and you mentioned it earlier, that somebody may start doing meditation, and it's like, you don't start meditation and then you're doing meditation 10 hours a day,
inside a cave.
Right, inside a cave. And yeah, exactly. So I encourage people, one of the best modes of getting our mind and our hearts around this is journaling. I'm an avid journaler. For 22 years, I've kept a journal every single day. And it's a place that you can then have these conversations with yourself, saying, oh, you know what? I'm really liking doing 10 minutes of poetry per day. And that may be perfect. And you can write about that. You can you can come back to it. In 6 months, if you kept a good journal, you can look back like 3 months ago. It's like, wow, I was doing 10 minutes of poetry then. And now, I'm realizing that I'm doing like a half an hour. I'm doing like 10 minutes in the morning and 10 minutes in the afternoon, and then 10 minutes right before bed or something like that. So a journaling process is super important to life in general, but it gives you an insight into how you're progressing with respect to this question of, how do I get creativity into my life? You may not do any creative thing for months, but at least you're writing about it. You see? And then
the beauty of it is there's no entry barrier to it.
No.
You probably got a notebook lying around somewhere anyway, and a pencil. Yeah.
Exactly.
So it isn't like you got to go take a class or anything.
No. Exactly. And that's what part of, I'm a little Luddite-esque, if that can be a word, of saying you need, this is my journal. You need a piece of paper and a pen, and then to write it, because there's something, I believe, in the process of physically putting
as
it onto
opposed to
paper,
doing
as
on a
opposed to,
computer
or on an app. Yeah,
dictating it.
right, exactly. So I think that it's super useful for people in general, as just a human being, but then as a creative process, but also as your relationships, your work situations, the projects that you're working on, having these places to go to that you can like sit down and think about it and put your thoughts on paper with no governor. It's like whatever you put down, it's yours and nobody else's.
Tell me about the TEDx. How'd you get involved in that? Because that's something I know a lot of people want to do.
Yeah, it's quite the experience. I was living in Boulder at the time. My wife and I were in Boulder. Okay. It was 2015, and I had known some folks that were very encouraging of me doing a TEDx talk. I didn't have one in mind, and TEDx CU, the university there, they put out a notice. I signed up and had a couple interviews, and there I was. And what's interesting about that experience is that it's 100% memorization.
Oh.
And
no teleprompter.
No teleprompter.
Okay.
Yeah. And I was a little bit freaked out the day of, because I did my mic check, and the technician said, say the first couple sentences and the last couple sentences of your talk. And that was just like, I don't know how to do that. I've never done that.
By the way, for the people who may not be aware, TEDx is kind of a famous talking sort of series, and they've had some really high profile people and some completely unknown people who became fairly famous because of it. It's about a 10-15 minute talk.
Right. Yep.
It's usually one topic, right to the point.
Yep.
It's sometimes not necessarily autobiographical, but sort of experiential.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, mine's autobiographical.
Now, what was yours about? Let me guess. Creativity. Incredible.
Yes,
yeah. I'm like
it's incredible. Yeah, it was phenomenal. Yeah.
So you go ahead. So how did the experience go? Were you nervous?
Yeah, it was a great experience. It was stressful to memorize, and having that moment at the mic check kind of put me in a state like, oh my God, am I going to get through this? And it was 400 plus people.
Oh, so you're live one.
Yeah, okay. It was live, and a lot of people, and I was the last speaker, and the beauty of it is modern technology. It's filmed, and they had some good editors, because I had probably 4 times when I just paused. At one point I looked over and I saw one of the guys that was the third speaker, and I said, oh wow, there's so and so, and that completely just like I lost my place where I was. So it's a interesting process. If I ever did it again, I would tell the people who are organizing it that here's what my talk is, here it is, blah blah blah, and then I would just do what I'm doing now. I would just
talk. You to be a little more spontaneous.
Yeah, for sure.
By the way, folks, there's no script here today at all. No script. Martial arts. Tell me about it. How'd you get into that? Was that part of your creative flow? Because we have that in common. We have that in common.
Oh, cool. It turned out to be definitely part of my creative process, and super influential in both my awareness of learning, but also then teaching as I got into teaching martial arts.
Let me tell you how I got into it real quick.
Sure.
This was years ago. I was sitting in my office. I got a phone call. It was a guy who was a sensei at a local martial arts academy, and he was looking for someone to come in and speak to his students about the importance of academics, and then he was going to talk about how the self-discipline and the the mental focus of taekwondo and karate and such helped you in school. And then he had another speaker come in and talk about bullying and stuff like that, which at the time was a little bit innovative, because the whole anti-bullying thing wasn't really front and center at this point.
Sure.
I thought, yeah, this really makes some sense. This guy's teaching sort of a discipline in a certain way. I see how it could apply into academics, because creative or not, you do need structure in academics.
Absolutely.
But, you can add it in. But and then it turned out, so you got kids, why don't you sign them up for the class? Oh, well, yeah. Why don't I start taking some classes? And that's really what happened. But there are actually studies that show, because a lot of the martial arts are bilateral. In other words, it's you're doing everything on the right and left side, and it stimulates your brain in a certain way, because the way the neurons and stuff communicate with each other. And there's actually been studies that show that people have better concentration, like a lot better, and are able to problem solve better because of that. And it also, the cool thing about it is it can become a lifelong thing.
Yeah.
There was a guy that was 70 something years old taking classes.
Absolutely. Yeah.
How do you think that's played in with your whole piece? How central is that to your identity, maybe? Because I know some people it's really, really important to them.
Right. Well, for a lot of years, it was as large as my artistic side was, for a couple of decades, a little longer, 25 years or so. And it had a deep impact on me with regards to, of course, the discipline, but also once you get to a certain level, then there's a possibility for things to become much less structured. So in sparring, there's no, there are some rules, don't hurt your partner, and, accept, all those that make sense. But everything else is whatever happens. So there's a remarkable harmony with my artistic creative side of how my body can move, and what kind of things happen when I disengage from too much thinking.
You just let your body knew what it learned how to do.
Exactly. So
I know exactly what you're saying. There was one kick I was trying to learn. I could never, if I thought about it, I couldn't do it.
Yeah.
But if I was just kind of rolling through a couple moves, and all of a sudden I was like, "Whoa, how did I do that?" Then I couldn't do it again.
Right. Yep. Right. Yeah.
Let's talk about one last thing here.
Sure.
And I want to bring it to a close here.
You bet.
The Saturi Institute, which is kind of a loaded word, because Saturi is I don't know if it's Japanese word, but it means sort of like inner peace in Japanese, I think, if my translation is correct. Saturi Innovation, that's the name of your company. Consulting and Ideation Accelerator. I love that. How long did it take you to take that? That's a heavy thing.
Well, yeah, it's got to be.
Who's a typical client for you, Patrick?
Well, it's
if there is such a thing. I'm getting a feeling there isn't, but if there was.
Yeah, I'm working on that. It's an emergent process.
Okay, it's evolving.
So it's simply working with people as individuals, or with a small team, or an entire company, to, as I've laid out, in our discussion, ways in which they can tap into, essentially restore their creativity. And and I believe when that starts to happen, just like when we're 5 years old, if you and I were 5 years old and we were going outside, to play, we wouldn't sit around and have a meeting for 4 hours to figure out what we're going to play.
Just happen.
It would just happen. So there's a quality of engagement that I'm interested in developing with people, so they can engage in that resonance of creativity, not the creativity that we were doing when we were 5, right? We're doing something different, and that's where the ideation comes in. It's like, what's your business, and what are you trying to do with your business? Are you a startup? Do you have, or are you a 80-year, huge company that needs some new vitality? It's all going to come from creativity. There's no new ideas that don't come from creativity. All innovation is a creative process.
At some point, yes.
Yeah. So if you're stuck in the creative level, then the innovation is going to be nearly impossible. So my whole concept, my whole vision is to loosen that up in people. Again, not to get them to be artists. I'm not concerned about that. If they do, that'd be wonderful. But to get them to unleash that inner ability, that inner drive, so they can apply it to, this application.
Do you find this is something like any muscle, so to speak, where the longer or the better people get at it, it starts to accelerate?
Sure, exactly.
Like as they become more creative, then they become even more creative, and it kind of accelerates, and they become more comfortable with it. The whole idea becomes, it just flows better.
Absolutely. It was for my life. I mean, you must, as an example, I just got a snippet of it, but that must have been, you must be able to relate to that with respect to playing the guitar. So the first day you picked up the guitar, you couldn't do what you did when we had our first meeting.
That is true. I gave Patrick a little recital.
It was good.
Thank you.
So
no, but that's true. And then you look back and you don't really think of it. You don't necessarily think of it as a direct A to B, because there's always, like this weird, convoluted. Patrick, what do you have to offer people? Workshops, consultations? If somebody wants to learn more about what you do, let's promote you here a little bit. How do they reach you? What can they expect? What's the path?
What the path is, Patrick Williams, patrick@patrickwilliams.com is my email.
Got it.
My website is called patrickwilliamsstaycreative.com. The Saturi innovation is developing. That's what I call it. Once you get there,
you need to journal a little more to bring that out of you.
Yeah, exactly. So yes, I do mentoring. I do consulting. I have half day, full day, 3-day workshops that I have available. We go through exercises and strategies and
what would you say? Say, I guess somebody's listening. I think I want to reach out to Patrick. I'm just not sure if it's for me. Convince somebody. What would they really gain? Maybe not immediately, but what would they gain by an experience with you like this?
Well,
I'm really curious.
Yeah. Well,
I want to know the answer too.
Yeah. They gain a reconnection to a part of themselves that they haven't used. Essentially, I mean, everybody uses it, but they're not using it to their full capacity. I talked a little bit about this when we spoke before. I've developed essentially a philosophy of creativity where I talk about why and how people lose their creativity. And I call that creative colonization and creative collapse. So there's a quality, we talked a little bit about how academia can take it away from you. It didn't for me. So there's a tendency for school to steer people away from their creativity. And so I call that a type of colonization, creative colonization, where it's slowly diminished. And then at some point, there's a creative collapse where it may not be sudden. Sometimes it is, where a teacher says X, Y, and Z, that you make horrible paintings or you can't sing or whatever it might be. And the kid was like, I'll never do that again.
As a stigmatization.
Right. Or it's just a slow collapse where, you might have been really into playing the guitar when you were 14, 15, and then you just seem not to have much time to spend time,
and it just
playing
sort of
guitar,
fades.
and it fades away. And then you're 45 years old, and it's like, wow, I should get back into guitar.
I'll tell you something interesting. At least I think it's interesting. And by the way, Patrick Williams is my guest on the Make the Grade podcast. I love what you're saying here, Patrick. Thank you.
Good.
They did a study in martial arts, but they repeated the study in some other things. And there are two things I'm interested in. So I'll share this real quick. When do you think the most common point a student quits martial arts is?
In as an age group or
No,
as
like
a
along
development?
the path of the progression of being a martial artist.
1 year.
It's a little more specific than that
Ah.
in terms of an accomplishment. I'll give you a hint.
Oh, when they get their black belt.
Exactly, but you know why? Here's why. Because you walk into any karate, or kido, judo, taekwondo. Do you want to be a black belt, Patrick? Of course I want to be a black belt. Great. Well, we got a program. $2,000, $6,000, whatever. These places aren't cheap. We're going to get you all the classes it takes to become a black belt. And then you go to class. All right, this is what black belts do. 3 more classes and you're this belt. Then 10 more you're this belt. 20 you're this belt. Oh, you got to learn this form and this kata and all this stuff. And guess what? They set themselves up over and over subconsciously to believe that that's the end goal.
Right.
Now, you know, as a martial artist, that for some people, that's just the beginning. Right. It really opens up for you in a lot of these disciplines at that point, because there's way more advanced and way more involved and complicated in some cases, things that you do. But people are set up to believe that that's the end point. Another interesting thing is, because another thing I'm into is triathlons, right? Where do you think the most common place people drop out of triathlons is? I'm just throwing this out. There's no reason.
After their first competition?
Well, no, it's during the race.
Oh,
like, let's say you joined it, like you did a TED Talk, right? You wouldn't have a choice. You got on stage, you had to do it. But a triathlon, you jump in the water, you swim. Then you get on the bike and you bike and you get off the bike. Now, where do you think the most common place people quit is?
Halfway through the marathon.
At the transitions. Because mentally it's like, oh, I got done the swimming. I can't bike. I'm too tired. It's too hot. It's too hilly.
Yeah, I'm wasted.
But once they start,
you're in
then something drives you, right? I can make only 3 more miles, 10 more miles, whatever.
Right.
Oh, I got to the transition. Now I got to start running. Oh man, my legs hurt, my back hurts, my butt hurts from the bike. So I really want to run, but once you start running, hey, I came this far. I'm darn going to finish.
Right. Sure.
So it's interesting that the failure points, and these are self-imposed because people, unless you're hurt, but are at points where you got a mountain you got to climb. Oh, I just got done my black belt. I got to get the secondary back. That's going to take you 2 more years. Oh my God, they told me black belts. Yeah. So it's interesting. I think it's just an interesting phenomenon how people set themselves up for this sometimes. And I think having the creative vision to understand that everything is kind of a checkpoint along the way to an enormous checkpoint.
Absolutely.
And then
there's another,
right. That's a big checkpoint. But and you have to just understand that you're never really done.
Right.
I mean, your body starts to give out. I can't do things I did, 20 years ago in martial arts, but that's just part of the process.
Exactly.
Patrick, is there anything you didn't get to say that you want to share?
We had a great conversation.
Yeah,
there's always
really
more to share. This is a topic that just goes on forever.
People out there, you reach out to Patrick at patrickwilliams.com. Look for the Saturi Innovation website coming to you soon. As soon as creative enough can handle it. Hey, you want to play my podcast guest game?
Sure.
I call this the Fave Five. I think you're gonna be good at this.
Okay.
You're gonna be good. I'm gonna say something. It's like a Rorschach. Remember that?
Okay. Oh yeah.
I'm gonna say something. You tell me your favorite thing in this category.
Okay.
It's easy. It's no pressure. It's easier than TED Talk. I can't promise you. We'll start with an easy one.
Okay.
Dessert.
Chocolate mousse.
Chocolate mousse. Homemade, or you cook that yourself?
I haven't never cooked it. It's
chocolate mousse. Like it. Favorite place to vacation? Now you lived in Denver. You lived in Boulder. You lived in Colorado.
I did. Yeah.
A lot of people go there to vacation.
Right. That's true. Wow. That's I'm gonna say
warm, cold.
Japan.
Yeah. I tell you, I went to Japan for 3 weeks. I really enjoyed that. Yeah. Beautiful country. Music. What kind of music?
Classical.
Yeah.
Beethoven right now. Just read a great biography of him. The last name is Bonn, Bonn. Interesting, great book. Yeah.
Got anything on your bucket list that you really got to accomplish?
Getting to a bunch of museums in and cathedrals in Europe to see some specific pieces of art.
Like the Louvre.
The Louvre,
Are there any
yeah.
Williams at the Louvre?
Not yet.
How about the what's one in Italy? The Uffizi.
Uffizi. Yeah. That's a good one too. Yeah, I have not been there.
I can see it here. Going down the hallway. Here's Rembrandt. Here's Botticelli, and here's Patrick Williams.
Yeah. Well, the most famous person I've had a piece next to was Andy Warhol.
Really?
Yeah. And to be honest, I think mine was definitely stronger than his. His was
I
a
only
print.
have to look at them, and I know they were.
Yeah. His was a print, and mine was a painting. So
there you go. Favorite color?
Oh, Steve, that's so.
I mean, as an artist, I know you love them all, but
true. I'm gonna say yellow right now.
Yellow.
Yeah, because it's a really, really, really hard color to deal with. Yeah, and it's a problematic color for painters.
Really?
Yeah.
In what way? Like to blend with other colors?
Well, yeah, blending, but it's just so powerful. It
upstages.
Oh, it just it just grabs you by the.
So it's like a color bully.
It is, yeah.
Is there such a thing?
It is, yeah. For
so
today,
there
is
mauve next to yellow. I can say they don't.
Yeah.
All right, here's the trick question of the day.
Okay,
right? And the last one, I promise.
Ready?
Favorite podcast?
Oh, I think it would be Stephen Green.
Yeah, right.
Make
man knows where his bread is buttered. Patrick Williams, I really appreciate you coming on. I enjoyed this. I hope you did. And more importantly, I hope those of you out there in Make the Grade podcast audience land did. Send us your comments. Send us your feedback. Check out what Patrick has to offer. Next time you're at the Louvre and they have a suggestion box, you know what to do.
Exactly.
Or the MoFo. What's it called? The MoFo, not MoFo. The
Uffizi.
No, the Uffizi, the one modern art one in San Francisco.
Yeah.
The MoMA, the Soma.
Yeah.
We got to get behind our buddy here.
Yeah.
So
exactly. So people can go to Patrick Williams Stay Creative. That's my business website. So
yeah. Awesome.
Or if you go to patrickwilliams.com, that's one of my art sites, and you can access the other sites that I have.
The collection.
Yeah.
Okay. Nice. Hey, if you liked what you heard, please leave some comments. Better yet, connect with Patrick or connect with me. Let us know what you're thinking. Really, the way you can thank me is to share this. In my opinion, I'm really not trying to hubris or anything. The more people to hear this kind of information, even if it helps one person, if this unlocks something for one person who becomes something and it changes this has all been well worthwhile for me. And I hope Patrick feels the same way.
I feel the same.
Steve Green here. We are calling it a day. Thank you. We'll see everybody next time. Let me cue the music. There we go. That's me playing the guitar, by the way, Patrick.
Sounds good.
All right. See everybody next time.
You've been listening to Make the Grade with the Success Doctor, Stephen Green. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe. For more resources and support, please visit makethegrade.net.